Now with the touchback at the 35, there's going to be an advantageous position to make teams return the ball and not give them the ball at the 35-yard line. I think you'll see a really big uptick.
You're tuned in to the Ross Tucker Football Podcast, guiding your gridiron journey, none other than your host, former NFL lineman, Ross Tucker.
Oh, yeah, it is. But it's not just any Ross Tucker Football Podcast. It is our first ever Saturday sit down. Remember, we've got a new format this year on a couple of our shows. I guess 3 out of the 4, right? Really all of them. You know, college draft, we're making at least 10 bets as Emery talks about the best prospects in the biggest games and makes his bet against the spread in at least 10 games every week. Even Money is not just one episode, it's 2 episodes, Tuesday and Thursday. Thursday, we get the injury information from Dr. Chow. We get the prop bets and parlays and line movement from Steve Fezzik. Of course, we're not doing the Fantasy Feast anymore, but we're making up for it with the 2 Even Money podcasts and with this Saturday sit down. So there's a lot to say about that Chargers-Chiefs game last night. We won't always have a game to talk about the next day. In fact, this will be when I'll be giving out winners for those of you that go the extra mile. This will also be when we can get to some of your email questions. So keep them coming, ross@rosstucker.com, which, by the way, is also where we need you to send in anything you ever do to try to be a winner. Let's say you rate and review the show or take advantage of one of our sponsors. Please, I want to reward you guys. I want to send you signed stuff in the mail, pictures, these awesome press passes I get every week, whatever it is, ross@rosstucker.com. So we've got news with the Eagles having a pretty big signing. We got the Chargers-Chiefs game to get to. The interview will be with my buddy Jay Feely, today's sit down, because this new touchback rule, we've only got 2 games so far, but it's going to have a big impact on the season. So I wanted to hear what a long-time NFL kicker thought of it. It's the Saturday Sit Down Big Show edition with Jay Feely.
The Big Show.
Look at this guy. I'm used to him wearing the CBS blazer.
That's right.
Next to me. And now he's rocking the full suit, looking very presidential, very senatorial. My longtime partner, I guess not longtime, but longtime friend.
There you go. And
last year partner for CBS, who's now gone to the dark side. He's in politics. My buddy Jay Feely. Jay, thanks so much for coming on the show, man. Really appreciate it.
I told you, highlight of my day coming on with you. You know, I mean, all these other interviews are kind of tough. This one I get to have fun with. So I'm excited to be on here with you, Ross. You do an awesome job. It was such a pleasure. And I'm not just saying this. Being in the booth with you, I had so much fun. We made fun of each other every game, but we truly liked each other. I think we learned things from each other. So I'm going to certainly miss that. And Tom McCarthy as well. Like, I couldn't have had 2 better partners.
Well, I really appreciate you saying that. And you said it during the season as well. And it doesn't always work out that way.
Yeah.
And I truly appreciate, I would bust your chops about kicking and about size. The first game, I was Josh Allen, you were Kyler Murray when we were doing the size. So that was awesome. I'm a big fan of people that can laugh at themselves. Goodness knows.
That's right.
I can laugh at myself.
Politics need more of that.
Yeah, no question. Okay, I want to get, I actually, the main impetus for bringing you on was just to catch up, but also I think the NFL is in for a big wake-up call this year with the touchback coming out to the 35. I think it's going to make a big, big difference.
Yeah.
But before we do that, okay, I think most people know Jay Feely, longtime NFL kicker. I forgot if it was 14, 15 years, but a long-time NFL kicker. And then in the media for at least the last 10 years, worked his way up from doing the Army games for CBS Sports Network, kind of like me.
All the best ones do. That's right.
Yeah. To doing NFL games and obviously being part of the crew with Tony Romo and Jim Nantz, as well as
Tracy Wolfson in the postseason, but now you made the decision this offseason to get involved in politics. So I guess were these two hand in hand, or would you have left broadcasting anyway? So I guess first it's like
Right.
this the decision to leave broadcasting.
No, I would not have left broadcasting if I wasn't going to get into politics, because I love doing games. I love the challenge of it. You know, you and I have such a similar background. When you're an offensive lineman or you're a kicker, you don't just get those opportunities, and you don't get put in a booth. You know, it's not like a quarterback coming out and they're like, hey, why don't you step into a booth and start calling games? We had to really work our way and make our way in the broadcasting field, you know, for you to be calling games in a booth, for me to work my way up to calling games in an NFL booth. That was special. And I took a lot of pride in that. And I know you did as well, because we did it the hard way. We had to prove ourselves. And I think you and I both felt that we had to be better and know more than everyone else, because people were going to look at us critically. And so we had to do a better job than anyone else to get to that spot. And so because of that, you had pride in it, and you know that you worked your way all the way up. Nobody gave you anything. And so I love doing games, like being able to be in that position where I'm talking to head coaches and general managers and owners and quarterbacks and coordinators, getting the inside scoop, getting to ask all the questions that every fan wants to ask. Like, why did you do that? Or what were you thinking here? You know, and then being able to bring that to the broadcast booth. It was so much fun, you know, but if I didn't feel called to something greater, Ross, then I wouldn't have stepped away from that. But you spending, you know, a year with me and getting to know me, getting to know my family and kind of seeing where my heart was. I know you can attest to this, that I always had a bigger picture in mind. And for me, it was always, how can I impact people's lives? And I tried to use broadcasting to do that. I tried to use the platform of playing to have an impact on people's lives. I know that you do the same thing. We have the same mentality when it comes to that. And for me, that next phase, and it was just a natural progression to say, you know what, how can I be most effective? Well, I think I can do that in politics. And I think we have too many people in politics that want to be self-serving, that get into politics for power, for money, to help themselves, rather than truly being that civil servant. And that's my desire. My goal is to get into politics, to serve people, to try to create equal opportunities to success for everyone in this country.
So it's interesting because off the top of my head, I feel like that's what most politicians say when they first get into it. And then along the line, at some part, it feels like it changes. You know, in other words, I feel like, I don't know if they get jaded or they realize it's too hard to really be a civil servant. You might as well take care of yourself, or whatever people might believe. But I'm just curious, talk about how this opportunity came about and the decision to leave the football world for the political arena. Like, how did this what was the genesis of this?
It was a long process. So I started talking about it a few years ago. My wife and I had talked about it 20 years ago when I started my playing career. You know, and then you play for 14 years and you kind of stop thinking about it. And then I went right into broadcasting, you know, but I had sat with President Trump and Jim Jordan a few years ago down at Mar-a-Lago. I was doing an event down there, and Jim Jordan said, hey, you want to watch the UFC fights afterwards with President Trump? And I'm like, heck yeah, I do. You know, so I hung around afterwards, and we sat out on a couch in their theater room there, and we watched about 3 hours of UFC fights and just had a blast talking about life and politics. And, you know, they both kind of talked to me about running for office then, but I had both of my girls at home. I didn't want to leave them and not be the dad that I wanted to be. So I kind of said no and put that on the back burner, you know, and just said, you know, when my kids are out of the house, maybe I'll start thinking about it. We're going to be empty nesters as of this next year. Andy Biggs, who was the congressman in my district where I've lived for 15 years in Arizona, decided not to run for re-election and to run for governor. So it was an open seat, you know, in the district where I live and where we've done all of our charity work, all of our community work. You know, our foundation has done all of its work, and we've done stuff with House of Refuge and, you know, all these different organizations. So we poured in. My wife was a teacher. I was a coach. I was on the school board in this community. So it was a kind of a natural fit at that point to say, okay, the seat's open. I think I can be somebody who truly has a heart and cares for people and can bring that conversation to politics. Because, you know, the political process, and you know, this is so filled with vitriol and people on both sides hate each other. And for me, like, I feel like you should be able to have those conversations, even with people that completely disagree with you politically, and be respectful and be kind and truly care about all people. And that's what I hope to bring to the political process. Maybe I'm naive, maybe that doesn't win. And people are like, no, I don't want you in office. I don't want you representing me. Then that's fine. I'll have tried. But I felt like this was, the time for me to try to put my imprint on our state and our country.
When's the election?
A year from now. So I am literally in campaign mode for over a year.
Wow. Okay. So I know it's only been, I don't know, 6 months at this point. I guess I'm curious, are there aspects of playing football and broadcasting that are similar to politics, or maybe that have just helped you with politics so far?
For sure. I think the aspects of football that carry over, I think one, for me, I'm a team guy. I've always been a team guy. And politics is so much about the individual. The political process is so much about what are you going to do for yourself, not for everyone else. And so for me, it was natural to come in with a different message and say, I want to be a team guy, and I want to help everyone, and I want to, try to be that kind of leader. I think in a locker room, I was elected captain on 4 different teams. And I think part of that's because of the way that I worked in the offseason, the work ethic that I had. I think the other part of it is the way that I interacted with my teammates, the care I had for my teammates, regardless of where they came from or what their background was or whether or not we agreed on political issues. Like, I love my teammates and I cared about them regardless. So I think that aspect of leadership carries over into politics. And when you're meeting with people and talking to them on the street or going and doing, events and speeches, trying to really bring that caring mentality to people and to the political process, and then the ability to communicate. What we do on air every week, 3 hours, live TV, trying to communicate and bring that to the fans, make it an enjoyable process. That's what you're doing in politics. You're sitting in front of a camera, you're doing interviews, you're talking about what you believe and why people should believe in you and why they should want you as a leader, for their communities.
Well, obviously, your area of expertise for a long time has been the kicking game. And so, as we turn the page to football a little bit more closely, last year, the new kickoff, I think it went from 21% returns to 33% returns. So essentially 1 in 5 to 1 in 3, which is a pretty big difference. Before we move on to what they're doing this year, I guess just what your reaction was to year one of the modified kickoff, because man, those first couple of games last year that's all we were talking about. So, but it's like by midway through the year, you're used to it.
Yeah, I think the NFL got what they wanted, which was returns were up a little bit and injuries were down. But for the most part, it was kind of a yawn for NFL fans. I don't think, it was much of a difference. It looked weird at the beginning. People kind of got used to it. Injuries went down, which is great. You and I both want as little injuries as possible in this game while keeping the physicality and what's great about the game. And so I think special teams coaches told the NFL before the season, hey, you can't just go to the 30. Otherwise, if your average return is the 29, which it was, then teams are just going to be like, well, I'll just kick it out of the end zone and we'll give them the touchback and they can have the ball at the 30. Now with the touchback at the 35, there's going to be an advantageous position to make teams return the ball and not give them the ball at the 35-yard line. I think you'll see a really big uptick because you're right. It was 33% returns last year. I would expect over 50%, maybe even higher, maybe up 70% returns this year. So that will be a dramatic difference in the game. And I think you saw that with teams. If you looked at free agency and then you looked at the draft, there was a much higher premium on signing those excellent special teams players, and teams even drafting some guys that were mostly special teams players because they know that now I have to really think about that. Last year, Ross, when you're creating your roster, if I can just say, I'm going to kick touchbacks and I'm not going to return the ball, then I don't have to worry about those cover guys and those return guys. That changes the whole makeup of your roster.
It's such a good point. And it's something I've been talking with people about. If there's a lot more kicks getting returned, then that's the kickoff team and the kickoff return team, right? So now 2 of the core 4, you're going to see a significant increase. I agree with you. I think I wouldn't be surprised if it is 70%. What's interesting about it, and I'm curious to get your thoughts, there's some school of thought, and I think we probably thought, Jay, that this would happen more often last year, but it's sort of that I don't know if there's a term for it, but it's the squib type kick that goes
Line
in the
drive kick.
landing zone,
Yeah.
like the knuckler
Hmm.
inside the 10 that you hope finds its way into the end zone because then
Right.
it only comes out to the 20, or at a minimum, you make it difficult for them to field. I guess I kind of thought we were going to see more of those last year, but now, based on practice reports for a bunch of different teams, it seems like that's what these guys are really practicing a lot of.
Well, and in the preseason last year, I watched Justin Tucker do that, and he had his worst year. So as a special teams coach, you worry about trying to get them to do things that are outside of the fundamentals of what they normally do, and will that have a negative impact on your kicking? Because when you're trying to wrap the ball, this is kind of inside minutia, of kicking, but when you're trying to wrap the ball, hit knucklers, now you're doing things that are counterintuitive to what actually help you make field goals. And a lot of times, when you do that, that can then have a negative correlation on when you go and you actually try and kick and you want to have your ankle square and you want to keep it locked and you want to follow straight through. So you start adding things in. That's why people are always like, well, why don't you have a punter who also kicks and you can save a roster spot? But those things are totally different. The mechanics are totally different. They work against each other, which is why you don't see that, and then the injury potential as well. So, it'll be interesting to see how special teams coaches handle it. If kickers feel like, that's going to be in any way a negative, because at the end of the day, what they really care about most, more than anything with kickers, is making field goals, and you see them continue to stretch back and back. You just saw the 70-yarder in the preseason. As these longer kicks are made, the margin for error is slimmer and slimmer, and you got to be so perfect to make those kicks, which, it's been unbelievable. I had a text thread, Ross, just kind of like this, but of kickers of my generation, guys like Scobie and Crosby and Suckup, and we're just blown away when you see a 70-yard kick and the ease in which some of these guys make these long field goals. And all of us were like, I'm really glad we played in our generation and not in this generation, because they're so stinking good.
All right, so as usual, there's a lot there, but I want to hit on that before I forget. How does that happen? Are they changing the balls?
No.
Are these guys just stronger than you? How is a kicker I know nothing about or very
Right.
little about? How is he making a 70-yarder with yards to spare? How is that even a thing?
I think it's twofold. First, they get instructions, good instructions. So many camps now. There's so many kicking instructors. Like when I was in high school, there was nothing. There was nobody to go to. I was just figuring it out on my own. And now you can start at 10 years old and you start getting good instruction. You start having the right fundamentals. And so by the time you're 20, you've had 10 years of practicing the right mechanics, the same thing, the same way every time. And you're getting to that 10,000 rep level earlier with the right mechanics where you're becoming an expert. The second thing is, I think guys are working out, kickers are working out at a much younger age and much harder. They're doing everything. Like, when I got in the NFL, I was doing everything that everyone else was doing. I was doing all the running, the lifting, everything that every guy was doing tailored to kicking. I think guys are doing that now at a younger age, at an earlier age, so their bodies are stronger. They're kicking the ball further. And when you can stay at 80% further and further back, that's you're always, whether you're throwing a ball, kicking a ball, that's the exertion level where you're most accurate. So the stronger you are, the greater you can stay. If I can stay at 80%, I would always kind of figure it out. And maybe it was like 53 yards for me. Well, now some of these guys can go back to 63 yards and stay at 80%. That's why they're so good on those long kicks.
Wow, that is fascinating. And the thing you said, Jay, about Justin Tucker and trying to wrap the ball and knuckler and then had his worst year, I haven't heard anybody else say that could be a negative on some of the accuracy for these guys. Just so you know, especially since you're not doing it anymore, I'm definitely stealing that. Okay,
Hey,
I'm definitely stealing that one.
Text me during games. You can ask me questions. You can just use it all. You broke down kicks last year when we were doing games. What are you talking about?
I tried, and then you would come in and tell me what the truth was. What would on
that point though, like I texted you when you're doing the Eagles game or right afterwards, because they switched the punter and the kicker and let them do the opposite thing during that game. I've been telling coaches to do that forever, because here I was, I asked to do that. Nobody would ever let me do that. And then all of a sudden I'm playing in a playoff game for the Jets at Cincinnati, and our punter, Steve Weatherford, can't play. They rule him out like 2 minutes before the game, and they come up to me, and they're like, Jay, you got to punt today. I'm like, what? And so here I go. I got to go out in the playoffs in a cold weather game. First punt ever in the NFL is in a playoff game. And I keep telling these coaches, hey, in these preseason games, let your guys get at least one or two. If they're the backup punter, let them punt a couple. If they're the backup kicker, let them where they don't matter. So that if it does happen in a game where you definitely need it, at least they've had a couple of practice reps in a game where they can be a little bit more comfortable doing it when it really matters.
Last one, I think, Jay. What would be your strategy? So knowing what we know about the kickoff out to the 35, the touchback, I should say, and what you just said about Justin Tucker. Interestingly, Jake Elliott had his worst years. I don't know if, that was part of it or whatever. But what would be your strategy? Maybe it depends on the kicker. But with the touchback at the 35, what would you try to do?
I mean, I would be aggressive as a special teams coach on both sides. So I'm making them return the ball, and I'm coming down there and I'm trying to, make plays inside the 25-yard line. If I can pick up 10 yards, that's a full first down that offense has to get just to get back to where it is for the touchback. Now I'm putting myself and my team at a decided advantage from a special team standpoint. And then, returning, I'd be super aggressive. I thought we'd see it last year where we saw, reverses and throwbacks and some real creativity on those returns. We didn't really see that. I think mostly because those special teams coaches just decided, you know what, like, let's just take the ball at the 30. Let's go out. We'll take the touchback and not risk injuries and not risk a negative play, a holding. Some of the coaches that were really aggressive, Ross, on making teams return it, were doing it because 1 out of every 4 plays was a penalty on the return team. So they were like, okay, we'll do a great job on those other 3, hopefully, and we'll get a penalty and back them way up. And, those are all things you got to take into account as a special teams coach. And then really it comes down to roster manipulation, right? What is the head coach and the GM's philosophy about special teams? If they don't give you the players, then I can't be that aggressive.
Absolutely fantastic work, Jay. For people that want to follow him on social media, it's still just at Jay Feely, right?
That's right.
Okay, I didn't know if it was
the
at
background has
Congressman
changed politics
Feely
now. That's right. The tweets have changed a little bit, but it's still at Jay Feely.
I love it. Absolutely. Oh, you got the picture. You got the Feely 2026.
See, now this one right here, that's maybe my favorite picture of all time. That's my wife and my dad. They found me when the Michigan fans in 1997 rushed the field when we had an undefeated season after we beat Ohio State. And somehow I found my soon-to-be wife and my dad, and one of the guys in the media got a picture of it. It's just, such a cool moment for me. It's probably my best moment in football was that moment right there.
That is awesome. Jay, good luck, man. Obviously, stay in touch. And thank you so much for coming on the show.
Kill it this year, Ross. You're always one of my favorite guys to listen to. You'll be, in my opinion, probably the best announcer out there this year. And I hope you have a blast and do a great job, dude.
Thank you so much.
See you, buddy.
All right, let's dive into the news. But first, I was telling you guys earlier in the week about my first game on the Game Time app, Eagles-Cowboys. How about Sunday's game? Cardinals-Saints, noon, Caesars Superdome. You can get in for $45. And they have super deals, lower level, 121 row 35 for $115. And remember, with the Game Time app, fees are included, okay? These other websites or apps or whatever, they'll surprise you at the end with crazy high fees. You don't want that. Take the guesswork out of buying NFL tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code ROSS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. So again, create an account and redeem code ROSS for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download the Game Time app today. From the rituals to the noise to the passion, you guys know, game day is an experience unlike any other. Whether you're tailgating, hosting, or just watching at home with your crew, choose Smirnoff because no game day is complete without the world's #1 vodka. It's an official vodka partner of the NFL. It's an award-winning vodka. It's been around since 1864. The brand is all about igniting the collective. When it comes to the NFL, we do game days. Grab a bottle of Smirnoff at your local retailer and head to Smirnoff.com to find recipes of delicious cocktails perfect for game day. Please drink responsibly. Smirnoff number 21 vodka, distilled from grain, 40% alcohol by volume. The Smirnoff Company, New York, New York. Please not share with anyone under legal drinking age.
Tuck's Takes.
All right, Ross, the biggest news since yesterday, the Chargers, they beat the Chiefs last night in Brazil, 27-21.
Boy, that was impressive. And that was unexpected, right? I mean, the biggest takeaway from the game is that Justin Herbert did it. Justin Herbert played fantastic. He outperformed Patrick Mahomes. You know, the Chiefs have lost some guys on the back end, and I think the Chiefs were expecting the Chargers to come out and try to ground and pound. Instead, they came out slinging the rock all over the place. Herbert, 3 touchdown passes, over 300 yards. He ran the ball well. You know, the Chiefs' offensive line, I actually thought the Chargers got the better of the Chiefs up front on both sides of the ball as well. Mahomes was fine. The Chiefs lost Xavier Worthy early with an injury. He ran into Kelsey on a mesh route in the middle of the field. But, man, what an impressive, gigantic win for the Chargers.
And the Eagles, they made a pretty big move. They're signing edge rushers Zadarius Smith.
Well, they obviously are not happy with their edge rushers and what happened in the game Thursday night. Sounds like they had this in the pipeline for a while because he visited on Friday. And so they're never going to just wait and rest. If there's a chance for them to get better, they're going to do it. You know how we get better, by the way? We get better by you guys going the extra mile, which is why when I see Joshua Haller make a comment on Twitter X, I'm going to say you're a winner, Joshua. When I see Ed Lane send me an email that he used the code at 1-800-Flowers.com, you're going to be rewarded as well, Ed, as is Andrew Bird 57, who gave us on youtube.com/Ross Tucker NFL a comment, said nothing better than Ross and Greg Cosell. I love it. Have a great weekend, everybody. I think we're done here.
Thanks for tuning in to the Ross Tucker Football Podcast. Make sure to also check out Even Money, Fantasy Feast, and College Draft, all on the DraftKings Network on Samsung TV Plus, YouTube, or subscribe to the podcast on your favorite platform.
Shout out myfrontpagestory.com. It's anniversary season. It is the best gift you could get a loved one for anything, especially an anniversary. Backofficescheduler.com, HumanHeadNYC.com, Pizza Boy Brewing, Sporticulture.